music was never really my thought process at first, even though music is all around me. In between the joining Blood Pact and going to Atlanta, kind of catapulted me to be who I am and do what I do now. For anybody on their creative journey or just in life, period, just know you're valuable. Stay close to your relationship with God. And if it feels like you're stagnant, be patient. Just keep on trying. The doors are going to open. God is just sharpening you as you're climbing this mountain. And then when you get to the top of that mountain, it's going to be right there. But you have to be prepared. You have to be equipped. So if it feels like it's a long journey and feels stagnant, you'll just keep going. Keep going.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Maia Moments. This is Maia here as your host, and I am here with one of my favorite people, Travis James. I think he's going by nowadays. And he is the CEO of Culture Villains indie label. He's also 2022 American Associate of Independent Music, as well as the Black Indie Music Accelerator Fellow. And I'm just so happy to have him here with me. Say hi, Travis.
Hey, everybody.
And we're going to be talking again about being creatively purposed in many different ways. I'm actually really excited for this conversation because I myself have not heard some of these things. And I kind of made it my mission to get him to say some of this stuff that I haven't heard him say or has asked him to talk about before. Because of course I know Travis, so I kind of know some insider things that I'm like, nobody's ever asked you that. Let's talk about it. So first of all, like I asked all guests, what I wanted to ask you for your own creative journey, that I know you're creatively linked to other people, of course, your artists and the people that you support, the people that you mentor, the people that you've invested in, right? But for your creative journey, where do you think you see the genesis of who you are and what you do? Do you see those moments even in your childhood that maybe you were groomed for this, or did you deviate from who you maybe were groomed or who you were to walk into the calling you feel like you have purposely? Tell me a little bit about that.
There's so much that goes into that. I'll say this. I'm not who I thought I would be at all. So as a child, I was all over the place, identity crisis left and right. I'm talking about from race to career path to what I wanted to do. I just had a total identity crisis. So as a kid, I wanted to be an athlete. I wanted to play football. I was all about sports, but I also grew up in West Baltimore. So in growing up in West Baltimore, there's certain things that are presented to you, or that are part of your environment. That I guess you're groomed to be what your environment dictates, I could say. Because everybody I grew up with and around, they're jail, dead, strung out, what have you. And, in my neighborhood, I'm probably the only person, in my age group that went to college, that didn't, get into street life, none of that.
Wow.
So
okay.
It's kind of like a deviation, because even going from there, when I really started getting into the church, I started thinking I'm supposed to be a pastor, because my pastor always was saying, you have an anointing on your life, and kept on connecting me with other ministers. So when I went to college, I started making my own little online devotionals and things like that. So music was never really my thought process at first, even though music is all around me. I have family members that have jazz bands. I have a cousin that's a touring rock artist. I have a god sister who's connected big time in music.
Dang.
Yeah, they're, it's all the way around. But I would probably say late in my experience at Liberty University in college, I got connected to this ministry called Bridging the Gap, and connected to this, I guess, subdivision of that ministry called Blood Pact.
BTG.
Yeah. So with Blood Pact, man, we just got connected with my boy Graham, and they started pushing me to get more involved in music. And I've always been a fan of music and love music, but my love kind of changed into wanting to create music, in different facets. So, eventually I ended up going to Atlanta and, being a songwriter, working for a production company, which was completely a terrible experience, but that kind of created the whole journey, I guess, and the whole vision, which later became Culture Villains. Just going down there and just getting screwed out of your money and out of your songs. So, yeah, to answer your question, I probably deviated from what I thought I would be as a kid. Um, but I would probably say in between the joining Blood Pact and going to Atlanta and getting screwed out of my songs kind of catapulted me to be who I am and do what
Oh
I do
God.
now. So,
Yeah. Okay, so the genesis for you wouldn't necessarily be in your childhood,
mm,
but it would be when you got to college and when you started having new experiences, being around new people, that kind of like opened that envelope for
right.
you, and piqued your curiosity. And you were doing things in a lot of different ways because of your songwriting and you're doing, he was doing other stuff too in music. If you're doing all these things, right, that you're not necessarily doing now, you kind of like stumbled your way into it. Or would that be an assumption?
No, I'd say everything I've ever done from creatively or entrepreneurship wise, I stumbled into it. It was never something that I planned out. It just, I kind of
Yeah.
stumbled into it. I'll tell you this: the breaking point was when I was in Atlanta. I wrote this song with my boy Graham, and it was called "Talk of the Town." So in Atlanta, we were broke, and we were with this production company, and it got to the point where I sold my writings of the song to a gentleman for $50 for gas money. Right. A couple months later, I see Selena Johnson. You remember Selena Johnson? All Falls Down.
Yes,
She's
yes. I
singing
know Selena.
"Talk of the Town," and it's another dude just rapping some verses, and it was on World Star. That's how I found it. I saw it on World Star.
What?
Lie to you not, and I got $50.
Jesus
That was
Christ.
the
Okay,
point. That
but
was the point we veered into where I am now.
but that makes sense because I can't see you. I wouldn't even take that. I'd be like, nah, something gotta give because this is crazy. Like, especially if it's Selena Johnson is on here singing what I'm writing. Like, I assume that you knew how valuable what you were doing was, but at the end of the day, like if it's not returning on investment or like you're not able to actually like like actually you were the one that wrote it, but you didn't get to see it through to a Selena Johnson or whoever else's desk that it was on. It kind of didn't even feel like you were doing what you wanted to do. But I think it's interesting as well, oh, just food for thought. Me and Travis both were in BTG. He was head honcho, was just doing my little thing or whatever. But I kind of talked about this in my personal episode with myself where I talk about my own creative journey, like where I'm kind of at now and how like when I got into BTG and I was doing social media stuff for BTG, I never thought that like that would the things that I did while I was with BTG, which was literally just me serving with my time. Like it had no expectations put in. I really didn't think I was doing anything truthfully and honestly, but people were like, "You're really good at this. Like you are like, no, like this is like your thing." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like this is what other big brands and stuff are doing. I'm just taking what I've seen, what I like, and I'm doing my own spin on it." And like it's different because at that time I was doing like social media management and stuff like that, but I'm doing strategy. Strategy is really what I was thinking of. I didn't have the vocabulary to understand all of the things, but like strategy is really my sweet spot. And I'm not even gonna hold you. I be having ideas, and I'm to think that like the genesis of kind of that journey of me being in so me professionally kind of started there too. That's kind of crazy. But college is a crazy experience that kind of does that to you. You're in a chamber where you get to take risks and do things. It's very expensive risks when you think about the student loans. But Jesus, you do.
I'll tell you this.
Let's not talk about that.
I'll tell you this. When I think about the journey and getting into our calling, I think, a lot of times we dream big, like we dream super big, but sometimes we don't dream purposeful. And a lot of times I feel like God like shifts us into dreaming purposeful. Like he shifts us into our calling where, I was dreaming like football. At one point I wanted to be a lawyer. Nowhere near none of those things now, but when God puts us in these specific situations and even in these specific missions, we start to identify what our actual purpose and our calling is, and we start to dream more into our calling. So, it's okay to dream, but I think sometimes we have to dream more purposeful and start to see where God is taking us and, just being in tune with him.
That's really good. And I like the season that I'm in my life right now where I was telling a friend, I'm like, the past 6 or so months since I graduated, basically, which was I graduated in December, but I was really finished in like the top of January. I was like, I'm just exhausted with like just doing things. Like if it's not purpose, whether that's a person, that's a place, that's a thing, like I don't want to be anywhere. I don't want to be around people. I don't want to be doing anything that just doesn't feel, it just feels like stuffed things to do, but it's not like feeding me or giving me energy. Because I really don't believe that we're supposed to live lives that are just so tiresome, like that ministry just be so draining, or like our lives just have to be always half empty and never full. Like I don't think that even Jesus lived a less than abundant life. I don't think he lived always scraping, or he lived in rest. Anytime he didn't feel connected to the Father, he felt like something was happening or he knew something was going to happen, he went and secluded himself. And so in this like chamber that I'm in, this season that I'm in, like that has been abundantly clear. Like you have to dream purpose and you have to be like, okay, just because it's an opportunity doesn't mean that that opportunity was meant for you. Like that really has to be your prayer, that every platform you stand on doesn't mean that that platform was necessarily for you. Even if it's offered for you, sometimes it's an act of obedience of you saying no to an opportunity because you know that's not the season that you're in and you were actually supposed to be doing it. Like you gotta be mature in your faith to know those things. But it's a rant. That's for another day. Okay, so you go to Atlanta, you make the decision to not do what you were doing anymore. So like, how does Culture Villains, and like, you're not only the CEO, but you're the founder. Like, what made you want to create an indie label? And then like, how did you find artists? I know you're already in those circles, but like, take me on the journey for Culture Villains, because I feel like I've never heard it before. And people don't really know like how did it come about. They just be like, oh yeah, CV the gang, like CV cool or whatever. But like, take me on that journey.
So I'll tell you this, the journey is like so crazy. And it's funny how God orchestrates relationships, right? So when I go to Atlanta, I'm dating this girl, right? And, some of the other stuff I did musically allowed certain songs to be on radio stations and connected me. And this girl connected me to a minister in Alabama and a radio station in Alabama that was spinning those other songs on their radio station. So back to back to Atlanta. Me and my boy Graham were with this production company. We're planning a tour. So one of the venues is in Montgomery, Alabama, right? So I connect with this minister. His name is Dwayne Rembert. He gets us this venue for free. Fast forward, I leave Atlanta. I'm back in Virginia. I connect back with BTG. So I'm actually working, with the former Blood Pack. I began working with these artists, working with artists like CJ King, working with people like Key Harris and different things like that. Just develop an artist development course because I wanted to develop and educate these artists so they don't end up like I did. Meanwhile, I don't date this girl anymore. She broke my heart. Blah blah blah. Dwayne calls me in 2014. He says, "Hey, I got these 2 young rappers that are on fire. There's this kid named Rockstar JT and this other guy named Big Ye. and I want to meet you. I want them to meet you and all this. So JT and Ye have this project that had to come out July 4th, 2014. They needed somebody to do some mixing on the track because the engineer just ditched them. So I did the mixing, and we got the EP out, and that's how I met and built that relationship with JT and Ye. Fast forward some more. I'm still, working with BTG. I'm meeting more artists. I meet Zara Josh. He comes through my artist development course. I meet
Right.
KJ Carter. He comes through there, and many other artists. So during this time, um, I'm wanting to create a collective that was just mission based, and my mission was, I've never felt truly comfortable in church culture. Never. Never, because I'm tatted. I'm
Yeah.
tatted. I'm from West Baltimore. I don't speak church talk. I don't do any of that. I just love God, right? So I wanted to create a collective that represented that culture, and that movement and that thought process, and just for people like me who don't fit in necessarily with a lot of the worldly stuff, but don't really fit in with church culture. There's like this medium, this specific medium. So
This
um,
conundrum. Yeah.
yeah, Culture Villain started out as just a movement slash it was going to be an apparel company. Um, but there was this need with these artists that just didn't know anything about anything when it came to their craft. And the need was just there. And I saw them about to get themselves in trouble. So I began
Mm.
to get closer with Big Ye, and help them start to develop his first album. Um, so as we're doing this, I'm like, man, something bigger is here. And so I'm like praying on it, like, God, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Um, and so that's when I started feeling the calling of, man, this is bigger than just clothing, a movement. Like, this movement is really connected to music. So that's when Culture Villains first like started to become what it is. So in the 2017 is when I developed, I guess, the foundation of Culture Villains, and I bring on Big Ye, Zar Josh, right? Um, and so
Yeah.
within that, I released Ye's first project through Culture Villains. And then, I keep hearing about this guy, like this guy just walking around Liberty. At this point, I'm not with BTG anymore. Um, I'm actually just solely focused on Culture Villains. And I keep hearing about this guy, and turns out his name is Cam. And so I keep hearing about this guy, and I'm like inviting him to the studio. And he just impresses me, like everything about him, his story, his hunger. I didn't like his personal music at all. I didn't like his personal music at all, but I saw the
Yeah,
I
we
saw the
know.
potential. So I bring him on, and this is like the core of Culture Villains. Like, it's like these are the guys that are gonna be a part of this label. So we just start building these guys up from scratch, teaching them things, building all the administrative stuff to propel them to their next step, which is kind of where we're at now. We've been building this thing in phases, and right now we're in phase 4 out of 5, as we're building, a lot of the back end stuff for Culture Villains and taking these next steps to get to where we want to go. So it's been a journey, but it's been so rewarding along the way.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine because I came on at the tail end of this. By the time I enter the picture for Cam, right? Because basically, when you left and you had started focusing solely on CV, is around the time that I get to Liberty and I become a part of BTG. So like we brushed shoulders, but we had passed each other and missed. But you find Cam, and Cam knows, yeah, like he was on he was on his story the other day putting up music that was old. And I was like, this is terrible. Like, anybody that knows me, I'm very honest. And I'm just like, this is trash. Like, you were terrible. I'm so glad I didn't know you then, because you would have never had a chance, homeboy. Like, I would have been like, I'm sorry, I'm so good. Like, no. But by the time I got there, Cam was actually he could command a stage. That's what I'll tell everybody. This man's stage presence was crazy. It was insane, and it's weird to know, like, if you guys don't know, Cam is my boyfriend, just for instance. But yeah, so like when I saw him perform, I was like, who is this? Like, this he was nerdy, and like he was not like he did. If you walked past him, he was an engineering student. He at no point would strike you as someone that even remotely liked hip hop, let alone was a hip hop artist that was demanding of like so much presence and could command a stage and like had it's crazy. So I know, saying all that to say, I know it has to be rewarding for you to see, because over the past few years, being able to see, from the outside looking in, a little closer than other people, it's been like, wow, this is so crazy. Culture Villains is just amazing. And I'll say, like, I think that's exactly why I wanted to talk with people on the pod this season about creatively purpose, because like you had mentioned earlier, when you felt your pastor telling you you had such an anointing on your life, and you thought that that meant like, oh, maybe I'm supposed to be going into ministry, and maybe that's my calling is in pastor and ministering. And like, of course, people are called for those things, but like, we as a generation are not called for conventional ways to be ministering to people. Like, we are called to be salt and light in darkness. And those places are not going to be in conventional positions, such as being a part of churches and being on their leadership. Like, of course, please do whatever you feel that God has called you to do. But if you feel called to be an actress like me, or you feel called to do a podcast, or you feel called to be doing an indie label for people that would resonate and tell the message of the gospel in the way that reaches people and not the way that's been done before, please step out and know that that's what you're called to do. Like, God gives us he gives us our family, and he gives us a community, and all of those things are purpose for us to be able to reach back and touch those people. And so I'm glad that you were able to stumble into it and like be obedient and prayerful about it for God to reveal it for you. Because if you had not, like, we wouldn't be sitting here, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, we wouldn't be sitting here. We wouldn't know each other. And I think that's just evidence of God being able to use any and everything. Like, if God can use a donkey to speak, he can use us in unconventional ways to be able to minister and to be able to be salt and light in places. And I see so many people mock those in mainstream world or in positions that they feel like is not quote unquote like, oh, that's, the amount of music groups and the amount of artists and the things that they have to deal with is crazy.
Yeah.
And it's insane.
Yeah. And I think, being exposed to so much in church culture with just being like a Liberty student, but also being connected to so many people. I'll tell you this, 2014 through 2016, each summer I was a part of this traveling youth conference, right? And the other thing I used to do there. And I think my tipping point, throughout the conference, I just felt like the pull was to like not bring people in from out of the church, because when I would bring people in, it felt like they were judged, like they were looked at funny by the way they were dressed. They were like, if girls came in with like shorter shorts, they would be talking about them and trying to cover them up and whatever. And I think the tipping point, which was, and this is another connection, we were in Williamsburg, and we were in this church, what was it called? Liberty. I think it was Liberty. And I met this young man who became pretty instrumental, named LaCroix. And his parents were the preachers at that church. So while at this church, one of the people, at the conference, was judging some friends of mine that came there and said that they didn't like their attire and that they need to sit in the back. And I'm just like, we haven't gone out into the community not once in these 3 years. We haven't gone in and brought kids in. We're taking these kids to the church and telling them how bad they need to be in church and how apart from the world they need to be. Why aren't we out there bringing the world in? Why aren't we out there in the marketplace? That's where I've always felt where we need to be, like CV. Like we're there for the marketplace. Here in Baltimore, like Like I hate to say this
Yeah.
because everybody says this, like because they want some street cred, but I like literally I be in the hood all the time. You know what I mean? I have a family full of drug dealers. You know what I mean? Like I'm in the hood all the
You
time.
do?
Yeah. And I'm in there like, we're kicking it, but I talk to them about God all the time and they know and they respect all of that. All of that. Like I don't have to like front for them. I don't have to talk a certain way to be around them, but they respect it and we have meaningful conversation. I get to understand the things that impact their lives, things that impact their mental health, where they stand on spirituality, and that's true ministry there, not just keeping people in the pews. That's not what I'm
Yeah.
about.
Because at the end of the day, even if you get the people to the church, that's not where they spend the majority of their time unless you're a PK like me. But like that's not where you spend the majority of your time. You are out there, they're at school, they're at the football games, they're at the basketball games, they're living their lives like regular people. Anybody who's a person, so you are limiting the amount of times that you actually can have relevance in their lives or touch them or even just be present with them if you only limit it to the four walls within the church. And honestly speaking, that's not necessarily biblical. That's not even like if you're saying I'm a Jesus follower, that's not even like going for the mode of what Jesus did. All he did was move. He was
Right.
always on the move. Like most of the miracles that happened, they were in him of being in pursuit of the mood. Like he was going somewhere and somebody had to touch the hem of his garment or somebody was in a tree asking Messiah, please help me. Like people were literally moving their that one story of when they were in the house and the crippled man and his friends ushered him down into the actual building to say, Jesus, we need you to heal him. And so like, if you're living your life only constrained and you're not on the move, then like, you're not necessarily doing things. You're not saying you're doing what you're trying to do. And I don't think it's for a lack of intention, good intentions. People have a lot of good intentions, but you really have to ask God to refine your intentions to be for a generation like this. I say it all the time. I think even what you do with culture villains, the type of mentor that you've been in people's lives, the way that you've sowed into them, I don't think it would be relevant for a different time, but the time that we're in now, right? The gifts that you have, the capacity that you have to do it, and like your conviction to do it, it's meant for right now. It's not meant for yesterday. It's not meant for today. But you had to start where you were. And so like I think when we do things from generation or religiously because of traditional things, those things become outdated and it's no longer even about God or like it's more so about religiously doing it because we're trying to pay homage to a person or a thing more than we're trying to edify God and like use it. And so we really have to purify and refine our intentions. And that only comes from prayer and personal relationship and fasting and making sure you're a temple that God can dwell in to actually be edifying of that. But to speak even to your point about people judging the type of people that you were bringing in and stuff like that. It's funny to me. It's comical to me. And at the end of the day, like, what is the incentive? What is the incentive to being made whole if you want them to come whole? Like, why do we put the totem pole of our faith and of our Christian and who we are, and we put it on people who have never accepted that.
Right.
And I've always felt it was weird because why are they needing to be made new if they are supposed to come the way that they are supposed to be transformed into? It's no incentive to do that.
You know,
I,
we have to
right.
be like, and I've heard this since I was a kid. Like the church, not the building, but the church needs to be a hospital for broken people. Like, and I've heard that so many times, but I've never
Yeah.
seen it actually applied. And you know what? I think we're in an era where creatives are starting to be that. We're that hospital for people, and then we're pointing them, reflecting them to God. Like, you know, and I see that in music. I have a friend named Montel Fish, and this guy did a huge shift when it came to his music. And He's blown up over the past 6 months. He just dropped an album last night. It was great. And the album,
I didn't even know. Kim told me, and I was like, I need to listen to this. But
yeah,
carry on. Yeah, I need to go listen to
yeah,
it.
my man's on a billboard in Times Square. So the album
Period.
is deals so much with grief and different things you feel when you lose things, when you lose people, and when you're just down and out. And over the course of his rollout, he was positioning so much music. He was positioning this character named Jamie, and Jamie was just a representation of grief and being lost. Um, People were so confused who were in the church. They're so confused. Like, are you falling away from God? This, here, and that. But when you look at the booklet on Apple Music, he kind of shows you how each song connects from touching broken people and relating it back to God. And it's right there in the Apple Music booklet. And
Yeah.
I just thought that was awesome. And it just represents where creative Christians have to penetrate the marketplace now. Like, I think that's where God wants us,
We
because
have to.
yeah, because
Yeah.
because the methods of the church, and I hate to always diss the church, but they're not really going out in the marketplace and not going out in healthy ways. Because I think
Yeah.
of I think of things like this past week. What's her name? Kim Burrell. That stuff that went out there, with her talking all reckless like she always does. But that's pushing people away from God. But if we're there for broken people, we're going to bring them in.
Woo.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And oftentimes we're in this state, and I'm glad to the mission, which I don't talk about the mission a lot in these episodes, but like at the core of what I'm doing on this podcast is to have a space that has topics that are relevant and to talk about Jesus. And so at the end of the day, like Jonathan McReynolds tweeted and he said, Kim Burrell is church satire and she is her target audience. And I couldn't have put it better than that, to be honest. There is a generation that, and this isn't even directly towards her, but what she kind of represents. There is a generation of believers who I cannot be mad at who they've become, because we come from a place in time of privilege where we have the space in the room to be transparently ourselves and not ask for permission. And that does have privilege in it for the time that we live in, because just 40 years ago, that was not the
Right.
case. 10 years ago, hell, that wasn't the case. So we do come and we look down and like, why are you doing that like that? Like that was that you're doing it wrong. And that's kind of historical revisionism in a sense, because just because it's afforded and given to you doesn't mean it was afforded and given to other people. But the ideology of certain people to not be able to grow and mature and see their blind spots and be aware and be producing the fruits of the spirit.
Right.
Like we all have shortcomings, but how do we know you? By your fruit. If your fruits you don't have evidence of that, then come on. Come on. But she represents people that are even my family, like I come from a church family. I come from that. I come from legacy. My great uncle, he owned a prominent ministry in Oakland, California called St. John Missionary Baptist Church. Like I come from that prominence, that legacy. And then even with my father, everywhere I go in the Bay Area, somebody, you Anderson. I don't take that lightly. So when I went away and I made a space for myself in Virginia and I went to school, it's really funny now because now it's the reverse. It's like, oh, you're Maya's dad. And he's so used to being like, oh, you're Willie's daughter. But like you really have to, just because you came from that does not mean you have to continue to walk in it, especially when you see how harmful it is and how deterring it is for people to want to come. You're supposed to be attractive, not necessarily attractive to the culture. And I think that's the double entendre with culture villains, is as much as you are a villain to the culture in church, you also are a villain to the culture in mainstream, that not necessarily everything that's being promoted there is what you're advocating for, and who you still are men of God, and you still are producing that standard of, yes, our backgrounds, where we come from, that's where God groomed us to be able to serve, right? Like who we are, we don't have to reject that we speak in Ebonics and that we're Black men and that we embrace that culture. Doesn't mean that we should reject that, but that's who we're called to now minister to, because that's who we know. But same as that, you also know that the things in my culture that are attractive but are harmful and go against the word of God, like we are talking about in our music, and we're talking about in the way that we live our lives. Like I really have to give kudos to you guys, and how like offline, like online, if you only know the CV guys or Travis online, you really don't know them because they're like crazy on their pod. They have a podcast too. Shout out to the CV pod. But like you would think that they're just some crazy guys that are always like high energy and all that. And
Not that at
truly and
all.
honestly, at the heart of who they are, they're not that at all. If you meet Travis, he's probably going to be in a corner somewhere in the back. He's not even trying to be around
That's
people
facts.
because he don't really be messing with y'all, to be honest. But like he'll give you a podcast, he'll talk to you, he'll give wisdom. But to know him and to call him a friend and to have him in your life, that's really a treasure. So I'm gonna just say that, give him his flowers real quick, because you
Thank
have
you.
sown into so many people's lives. Yeah. This is a Travis
Thank
stand
you.
account. Okay. And he really deserves so much more accolades and flowers that he doesn't really get for being instrumental in people's lives. That's a different story for a different day. But yeah, deviating from that and getting back on point for a second. So where are you necessarily excited for CV moving forward? Like, what do you, or what other things are you excited for in your creative journey moving on? Because I know things as you've been doing them and as you've been kind of on the back end of the music behind the scenes, you've learned things and you've transitioned into other positions, and your thinking has elevated. So what are you excited for moving forward? And then do you have any advice for people that may not necessarily have the same vision as you to create an indie label, but maybe they want to get into the back end of music, or maybe they just need some type of advice about that process, being in the music industry?
So yeah, just to talk about what I'm excited about first. Man, we pivoted so much in Culture Villains. You know, when I talk about an identity crisis when I was a kid, when we first started this label, there was an identity crisis because, you know, we got so much early success with Yay because the music was catered to that audience. But then when, you know, they realized like, you know, we're Black, you know, there came a lot with that. And there was an acceptance of that type of music. No, literally, like if like the guys don't even know half the stuff I have to deal with talking to people, and how much they hate some of the stuff we do.
Oh God.
Um, but you know, we pivoted so much to be able to embrace who we really are. Because one thing I told myself, I'm not gonna play the game. Like I'm not gonna play the game and try to force them to be something they're not, and try to force them to change their beliefs or their music to fit a certain demographic of people. So we pivoted a lot so we can be true to ourselves, and the goal is, of course, the guys to be able to, you know, profit from their music. So we've created this whole back
I
end,
love it.
and gotten into the sync world, which I think is just so amazing. We've created a whole other side of CV, and utilizing our publishing company, Villains Culture Publishing, where we now have a catalog of 120 songs. Um, and we've actually signed 11 songwriters and producers that are working to create
Okay.
sync specific music. We've also are about to, and this is the T, you get it first. We're launching a sub label because one of my other principles are put my friends on.
Tea.
So within Culture Villains, there will be a sub label called LEG, stands for the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. These are a group of men that I've written with in this music industry for a while. They're my brothers, and I wanted to give one of my closest brothers a sense of ownership. Me and him own 50. Well, I own 51% of the label. He owns the rest, and this is his label. I'm overseeing it, but this is something I'm truly excited about because this allows me to utilize my resources to help my other brothers too. So we're all in this sync game together. We're all, we just got a distro deal. Shout out to Vidya. Got a distro deal with them for our back catalog and for our sync music. We got our pub admin that we're working with. We got some other stuff in the work. We got a lot of sync placements coming. We got about 7 deals in the sync world right now with different libraries. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited to get back on the road, look for a spring tour. Working on it right now. No lie. We've hired our first employee, Adrian Taylor.
Wow.
She's our head of sync. She was our intern and now she's our head of sync.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hold on.
What's up?
Because let me just let me what? Like he just dropped a bunch of tea because some of the stuff I didn't even know. Wow. Well, congratulations. I'm very excited. I'm very excited to be able to watch on the sidelines in front row and eat my popcorn and watch some of this stuff pop off because this is amazing. I'm so proud of you and your team and the guys for just continuing to stay in the trenches too, because every day ain't messages like this where it's like, oh, we're doing amazing things. God is good, guys. Like every day isn't like that. You have to, you have seasons of ebb and flow, and it's your faithfulness in those seasons of ebb where you gotta just be like, no, I know what God told me to do. I have to continue to be obedient. I'm committed to this vision. And you being the visionary, that comes with a different level of commitment because you have to lead, you have to oversee. So I'm really proud of you. I really am. I love to be able to just see you do what you do because call this guy boss man because he just be making moves. That's just so beautiful, especially with the sync, like in the another label. Like, who are you? Who are you?
So I'll tell you this, and you said about anybody starting a label or working in the music industry. I would never recommend anybody start a record label. I do this solely because I love it. Like it takes time, it takes money. I tell people I've lost so much money messing with this thing. I probably would have bought a mansion by now. But I love it.
I believe
love
you.
it. You have to truly love music. I was in New York at Indie Week. The American Association of Independent Music had Indie Week in New York, and I wanted to bring my artist Cam, so he can see where we, how close we are to our goals. And anybody trying to break into this music thing, the biggest thing I would tell you is build your network and be a good person. Every ounce of favor I've received is from being a good person to people, not compromising my morals, not trying to do shady business. I've never done shady business. I made mistakes.
Talk about it.
I made mistakes, but I've never done shady business. But being a good person to people, I've gotten so many opportunities that I tell people I didn't deserve. But the favor is in being a good person and reflecting God. But be a good person to people and build your network. When we were in New York, I built relationships with the head of indie label relations at Amazon Music, at YouTube. Got the email and the phone number of the head of hip hop at Bandcamp. Like I built so many relationships, and people want to see you win. And that lets me know, like I did the right thing, not playing the game in what's considered Christian hip hop. Not playing the game because a lot of I'll tell you this, man. A lot of those guys, they're getting a little clout and their likes and everything, but still broke. We're setting up something over at CV that I'm proud of, where we can be ourselves, not play the game, but they're gonna make more money. Like, because I'll tell you this. Look, by the end of next year, all my artists will own their own labels, and they will own all their masters. So simple as that.
And that's a mic drop. So a mic drop right there.
We pivoted so much on this journey just to be able to build this foundation where everybody connected to me is going to own and they're to be successful. Simple as that.
I love that. Wow. I to your point of being a good person and doing good business and building a network of people, I couldn't stress that enough. And I've said this so many times, like community is everything. the community of people that you call friends, the people that you lean on, like your close people that you don't even have. I'm not talking about people that you necessarily call every day and kiki with it, but like, you know who your tribe is, you know who your community is, you know who your people is. They ride for you, you ride for them. Building that it's I don't even think you necessarily should have control over that. I think you should really like let God do that. I cannot take credit for the people that are in my lives. I really wish I could. I really wish like I was like, oh yeah, them. I knew that would be good. Some people, further down the line after I had seen how God moved in my life and relationships, I was able to say, you know what, I think that would be a good relationship for me. And it would keep me accountable and it would produce the fruits of the spirit and the things that I'm looking for myself, truly and honestly. But when I was just starting, I was naive, but it was wisdom from God to pray at that time when I was 18 and 19. Like, God, please just put people in my life that like give me a community. Like I'm yearning for that. I've never had it at the level that I know that I could. And I'm just really seeking on your behalf to do that. And he really answered my prayers more than I could ask. So really having that to be like something that's crucial for you. But even then, so apart from the people that you have in your community, building a relationship with people that they don't even gotta be your friend. They're an acquaintance. They're a business partner. And they're the people that you call when you just literally need something for business or you just need some advice, or make those relationships and knows that acquaintances are okay to have too. Everybody's not meant to be your best friend. Everybody's not meant to walk through this life with you. Some people are meant for seasons. Some people are meant to be longer than a season, but in a different capacity than your traditional conventional friends. So really
Yeah.
building that network. And there's a verse that says, a reputation is more valuable than riches and jewels. Please stop doing, it's so true. Please stop doing things that you know.
Look, let me tell you this. All right. So you brought up earlier the Black Indie Music Accelerator. I'm part of the 2022 fellowship. Um, this is how I got into it, right? I applied because one of my friends who I'm close to, Erin Knight, I think she's one of your guests this season. She was
He
in it
is.
last year, so I applied, and I got it in, of course. So on the advisory council is Marcus Hollinger. He's the president of marketing at Reach Records. So he was the one I think that selected me. And I've never met Marcus
Wow.
personally. So he happened to
Yeah.
be at lunch. He like looked everything up on Culture Villains and me, because he was familiar with us, but he didn't know like us personally. Um, so
Yeah.
he knew everything about me. So he was at lunch one day, and I just found the whole story out last week. He was at lunch one day with one of the kids that used to be in Bridging the Gap. Well, he's not a kid; he's a grown man now, married. But Romar Jesse, he was at lunch for somebody's birthday, um,
Yeah.
and he was just asking Romar about like me and Liberty, and Romar gave all these glowing remarks. And me and Romar don't talk as much these days, but my reputation is there. I've been good to people in so many aspects. And he just gave this raving review. He didn't know what it was for, but he was just asking, like Marcus asked about me and didn't say nothing about the fellowship. And Romar just went talking for like a half hour about me and over tacos.
Wow.
And so Marcus, later that night, I got the email saying I got in, and Marcus connected me with so many people when I was in New York
Mm,
at the Indie Week,
yeah.
where I have a personal relation with the CEO of a Web3 company and all the other relationships I told you about. And
Yeah.
that allowed me to connect with Vidya and get a personal invite to a closed brunch in New York, where I met with the director of all of label relations at Vidya, um,
Crazy.
while also being connected with a rep who was part of artist and label relationships. And, telling them that I was looking to, move my back catalog before 2020 somewhere and, upload, find a distribution company for the sync music that we're about to embark on. So
Right.
all of that, being a good person, all this connection led to T. Here's the T. Vidya gave us a bag to move our catalog over.
Oh, period.
They gave us a bag for
Period.
it.
But
So,
listen, that seed that you planted, right, in RJ
mhm.
of Romar Jesse was years removed from this conversation that
Yep.
goes not as telephone in a bad way, but goes down this trail of telephone years later. And at that time, you probably weren't even thinking like, oh, I'm going to sow into this kid. Like you didn't have expectations for it, but God used it because that's what happens when you're a good person. And you like truly and honestly, when you just focus on, you know what, I want to be the person that other people, like I haven't seen other people be. I just want to be a good person and do what I do. Like just keep your nose and head down. Stop looking at other people. Don't compare your story to others. You don't know what other people have been through. You don't know what they had to do to get here. Like you probably may even be, oh, you know, Travis, he's so cool. Like I wish I could be like him. Or like, please no, that oil is heavy and it's potent because he's been through some things. Okay, things known and unknown. He's been through things, and he's continued to let God like really renew him and transform him even through it all. And having that community of people is evident in treasure of that. But I even keep thinking of like Graham and how like Graham is in so many different levels of this. Graham is also a part of the executive team for Culture Villains now as well. So like just seeing how like, please, a reputation, good reputation. If you didn't get anything else out of this, a good reputation is more valuable than riches and gold, because you know how much gas is nowadays. That money is gone. It's gone before you even see it in your bank account. But your reputation, who you are to people, how you interact with people, and even when you're wrong, like I'm not saying be perfect. I had a situation that happened in business where I didn't do something the right way. I didn't do it necessarily wrong, but I didn't do it the right way. And I knew like, okay, I haven't talked to them. There's been no communication. Let me just spin around the block real quick and be honest and be transparent and say like, hey, y'all, I wish this would have went better. I know we haven't communicated, but I just want to reach out because I don't like things left, you know, in the open like that. And it was met with a really great response. And I know it will be beneficial even later on in life. But I think knowing when, even if it's not even a big thing that maybe it wasn't requiring an apology, but you know, an apology may be due. You may have left a bad taste in people's mouths, even on accident. You didn't have intention. Being transparent enough to say, you know what? I wish that would have been better. That is the producing of the character that you want to have in your life, or if that's what you want. And it's a skill, like being the person that you want to be. You got to keep doing it to become that person. It's not a one and done, one choice. You got to keep doing it and keep asking God to like give you strength, because it kills pride. It kills ego. It kills whoever you're trying to act like you are, whoever you want to be honest with yourself and do those things. But wow, I'm so happy for all the things that you just blessed us with. You always do this every time we get on this podcast. You drop bombs. I'm very happy to be the one to be getting them, because it's always a good time. If you haven't listened to the last episode, Travis, make sure you go listen to that. That was the last episode that I published. And at this point, that is the highest downloaded episode. So he gets to flex real quick. But yeah, it was wow. Now, closing, do you have any like lasting things that you would want to just give as wisdom? I think you dropped a lot of good nuggets in here, but just as we close.
Yeah. For anybody on their creative journey or just in life, period, just know you're valuable. You know, you may not see this purpose. You know, I know a lot of people are like always looking for their purpose. You may not see it, but, you know, stay closely in relationship with God, because God's going to reveal everything as far as your calling. Just continue to dig deeper into that relationship and making sure it's intimate with Him, and you know, just totally doing it for yourself. I mean, those times are going to come. And if it feels like you're stagnant, be patient. Just keep on trying. Like the doors are going to open. They're going to open. A lot of times, God is just sharpening you for. Man, I was in church Sunday. The lady was talking about it. God is sharpening you as you're like climbing this mountain. And then when you get to the top of that mountain, it's going to be right there. But you have to be prepared. You have to be equipped. So if it feels like it's a long journey, it feels stagnant, you'll just keep going, keep going.
Yeah, yeah. And don't get weary in well doing, for in due season you will reap if you faint not. sometimes like you might be spinning around the block, making the same mistakes over and over again and not realizing it and finding yourself in the same situations, because you're not just being a little self-aware of circumstances or things that may be happening. So really just, like you said, like stay in your word, you got to use all the parts of God, really know the Father, be praying and be prayerful, like study his word to know. So you study his word, not just to know scripture and be able to quote it to people. You quote scripture so that in those times when you need it, you can use it as the weapon against something that's spiritually trying to attack you.
Amen. Yeah.
And you know it so that when you hear his voice, you can discern what is God and what is not of God, but trying to influence you in the way that God can influence you. And so you really dig in that Bible to know who he is and what his promises are and how he talks so that you can discern his voice better. And then what a lot of people, they might do the first two, but I haven't heard a lot of people recently say, you need the Holy Spirit. You need it. Like you have to invite the Holy Spirit. It's not just something like, oh, the Holy Spirit is always with me. Sometimes he's not because you didn't invite him into the situation. So like really like prayerfully, like, Holy Spirit, I invite you in. Jesus, I need your help. And as you continue to do that, you'll build the skill and you'll get better. We're all imperfect people just trying to make things happen. But
Right.
I will say that I do think God has raised up a generation of creatives to be in spaces that we've never been in before, that we've never operated in before, to really take some commanding positions and being unashamed of who we are, whose we are, and what we represent. And so thank you so much for being on the podcast, Travis. I love you. I'm so thankful to have you and call you a friend in life. And if you would like to follow Travis and his journey, I will leave all his information down below.
Can I give a shout out before we go? I want to give a shout out to my fiance, Sierra, soon to be Smith. So I just want to give a shout out to her. I'm going to tell every creative this: like, if you enter a partnership, a relationship, or anything, make sure that's with the right person. It makes all the difference. You want to be equally yoked in any relationship. But I feel like in the creative journey, it's so much more important because so much more goes into it as a creative, as an entrepreneur. So choosing your partner wisely is important. And I have such an amazing partner. Like, I'm gonna tell you, she looks at all my flaws. She looks at my discouragement and she just always picks me back up. She doesn't have to, but she does it. So I appreciate her and I love her so much. So.
Wow. Tears.
Oh my goodness.
Tears of joy. We love Sierra. Sierra is Queen Bee. And just the change in Travis of him, like actually you can tell that they're equally yoked and that they were meant to be together, especially in this season of life. It's evident. So, wow. Shout out to Sierra. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of Maia Moments, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.